All right, so what we're going to need is, of course, some tiles. So here are some, what is it, 3 by 6 inch tiles, I believe it is. I picked these tiles up for 27 cents each at our local Habitat for Humanity store. So they usually have some offs, some extras that companies donate to the Habitat for Humanity store, and then they sell them off. So you can usually get offs, all kinds of different tiles for relatively cheap. I picked this size because it's actually the same size as this tile. So I did up some recognition. We got recognition for our local municipality for Small Business of the Year, and that was in 2018. And it turned out really nice. It's got some nice sparkle to it. And what I did is I engraved it backwards, or mirrored on the back here. And I found the appropriate settings to use that wouldn't burn completely through, but that burned enough. So I did 4 of them for 4 different recognitions that we've gotten since 2018, and they turned out really nice. So I'm gonna maybe post those outside at our gate. We're open to the public during the summer months. We have people come in and visit our animals here on the farm. So what I want to do here is I want to engrave onto these white tiles, and I'm going to use white paint. So white paint, you ask? Why are you going to use white paint to go on white tiles? Well, the whole idea with this is, see, white products have a UV inhibitor in it called titanium dioxide. Now other products and other colors may use something like carbon black, like for example polyethylene pipe. When it's manufactured, it has carbon black in it. Of course, adding carbon black to white is going to give you a gray. If you're doing polyethylene pipe manufacturing and you're making a white pipe, then you would use likely something like a titanium dioxide for your white colorant. What we're going to do is, and I've already done it, I've painted the tiles. I've painted 3 of the tiles. Now, I first looked at this. It's Krylon, I guess it's pronounced. So it's a rust inhibitor. I had this kicking around here, and I thought, okay, well, let's bring up the SDS sheet on it, or the safety data sheet, and see what's in it, how much titanium dioxide is in it. So I found out, I can't remember offhand, but it was around 5.5 or 5.6% titanium dioxide. So I thought, well, the more titanium dioxide, the better, right? So that's my theory anyway. So I went to Home Depot with my phone in hand, checking out websites. The Krylon ones didn't really have anything higher than that. I think there might have been an 8. So I went into RUST-OLEUM's website and took a look at all their whites and flat whites, semi-glosses and glosses. This is actually a gloss paint. So this is the Ultra cover by RUST-OLEUM, Painter's Touch. And this one has 13% titanium dioxide. So I thought, okay, well, that's probably going to give me a good number. I did find one that was 19.6%. And then when I looked further into it with the part number, it was actually a paint-on one. It was a gallon container. Now, I don't like the paint-on types. There is some paints that people will use to paint onto glass and tiles. I find it way too time-consuming. I don't have the patience for that kind of thing. Putting on multiple coats, and they just don't go on as even as a spray paint can be put on. So we're going to give this a run, and what it does and how it turns it black is when you coat it, you fire it with the laser, and it burns the titanium dioxide and etches it onto the surface. So that's why we're using the white paint. Now what I've done here is I have cleaned the tile with alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, get a nice good cleaned surface, and then I painted it. You can't really see too much difference between the two of them, but this one's a painted one. This is actually a little bit whiter than the white tile, which is slightly cream colored, but that's no problem. Now when handling the tile after you've cleaned it you want to make sure that you're holding it from the edges, because if you get your fingerprint on here and then paint it, you may have issues with it adhering to that area, and you may have issues with the actual laser burning process. So this is the proper way to hold it. Now I did 3 tiles. One of them's a little bit larger, not much, maybe ½ an inch longer than the others. So what I figured is I'd use that as a template for my grid pattern. So whenever you're using a new product, a new material, I haven't done this with tiles before, so I want to find out what works best. Now, the grid pattern is something like this. So I did this with wood, and you can see on here, this is the cutting and this is the etching. Obviously I can't cut right through, and what I've done is I've actually left some of the other ones off because they were just burning too much. This type of wood, I believe, is 5mm. It's a plywood. Plywood can be a little tricky to cut because of the glue that binds all those layers together. So you may find that when you're cutting a certain section, some of the things you cut out may not cut out completely. They may hang on a little bit. You may have to take a razor blade or an X-Acto knife and just kind of cut them out. So that's the issue with some plywoods. But this is what we want. So now I've got this template for this wood, and I know and I can pick out what the best is. So what I'm going to do is on the one test tile, and I'm going to do that first, I'm going to do that same grid pattern. I'll likely fill in the blanks on it, and then we'll do a run, and it'll probably take 20 minutes to run that full pattern off, and then we'll be able to have a look and see, you know, where that sweet spot is. All right, my wonderful ventilation solution. I love it. All right, so we're going to turn everything on here, so we're going to be able to get our grid template lined up with our tile. Now, my thing is here, this is a complete square, and I'm going on to a rectangle. So I may want to squish it down. So what I'm using here is this grid pattern goes from 10 to 100% in increments of 10, and the power as well. So that's what I'm using for my numbers. The research I've done suggests about 30 millimeters per second by 60% power is kind of what I'm thinking the sweet spot's going to be, but I want to do my own test here. Now I'm just wondering, they don't have to be squares, right? There we go. Let's do it that way. Now with the camera being at the top, shining down this way, I always find that you want to bring your project up higher. If it's raised on the prisms, you want to bring it up even higher yet. The higher it is, the seems to be more off because the camera is shooting from an angle. But we're going to do a test run. All right, so this is what we have here. I'm going to do a test run and make sure that it's lined up. All right, let's see how good of a shot here I have in lining it up. Sometimes it's hard to see. It looks like it has to be bumped up a little bit. Sometimes you have to kind of dart back and forth because that head gets in the way. So it looks to be the laser was a little bit off the bottom. So yeah, I've got to bring it up further. So looking at my image here, it did drop down, it's because I didn't auto measure. So as soon as I auto measured, it knew what the distance was. So I am just going to bring that up again towards the top. All right, we're up and running, framing again. This one should be it. Let's see if we can get a clear shot. Buttons flashing. Maybe I'll try on this side here. Okay, right on the top and right on the bottom. Okay, so I think we're good. So we are going to start running that and see what we come up with. All right, so we're back, and it's actually been a few days because I had an idea, so I ran another test. So the one I ran is right here. So this is the one that I ran with 2 coats. So what I did is I followed the directions on the paint, and the paint directions basically say to put overlapping spray. I kind of overlapped spray and I kind of went across it 3 times just to make sure I had a good coat. And then it says after a few minutes, it doesn't give an exact amount of minutes, but after 2 or 3 minutes, apply a second coat. So I went through overlapping coat, and I kind of went back and forth about 3 times to give it a nice even coat, and then I let it dry. So that's where that one was. And I thought, okay, so more titanium dioxide in the spray paint and maybe a thicker coat. So on this, you can see, you always want to get, you always want to be able to do it faster than what's down here. So a speed of 10, right? So if we look at that, we can say, maybe a speed of 10 at 20 power, somewhere around there. So being able to do it faster, of course, saves you time. So I went through and did it again. On the one that I had already painted, I went through the process again and gave it 2 more coats, waiting a couple minutes between each one. And here is the results for this one here. So you can see we've got some darker lines up here. We could probably get away with maybe 50 speed, 40 to 50 speed at 100 power. And if you compare the two, I'll put both of them up here side by side, you can see that in that same range, let's say 50 speed and 100 power, the one that I did 2 coats on only, you can see how it's kind of blotchy. There's some whites that go through it, where the other one is a little better. So what I would recommend, or what I would do next, is probably do 3 total coats. Now on the can it says to do your coat, and then it says you can put 2 more coats a few minutes apart after that. I just did 1 second coat, but I would probably go with a 3rd coat, and that'll likely get the best results. So I'm going to run my project, and I'm running it on the tile that I only had the initial 2 coats on. Alright, so I've started up the program here. So what I want to do is get into my projects, and I've got this what's called QR code for YouTube. So I'm going to drag that over into there. Let it load up, and of course, yes, scale it. It's always good to make your project larger to make sure you have good quality. So I always kind of run into this. Yes, I want to scale it. So this is the idea here. I've got a QR code that I made online that takes people to my YouTube channel. And I want to put this outside so that people that are visiting our farm can see this and they're like, oh, okay, they've got a YouTube channel, and then maybe pull out their camera and do a scan. So we need to get our tile in there. So we will set it up. So it's going to be running this way up and down. So I want to put it in, and I want to line it up as best I can. And I also want to make sure that that red dot is hitting it so that my auto measure works. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. We'll line this up back over on the computer. Just image loading, and there it is there. All right, so now I want to take and bring this down, put it. Now I have measured the tile top and bottom and side to side to get my measurements. I went into Photoshop, you can use whatever program you have, and I started the project with those same exact dimensions so that it sees that. And if it was only the text portion of it, I would have to kind of, move it up and down. This is where I want to see it. So this is where it's going to go. So it's a little big there. We'll just pull it down a little bit. Maybe have it around there. And maybe a little less. Now it's not going to be too bad because the section on the bottom here isn't going to be engraving. So it's kind of just setting up as kind of a template here as to my edges. So we will bring it down. Up. Now again, you want to bring it up a little higher to the top just because the camera is in that top section there. So you can see there's a little bit more of a gap here on the bottom. I haven't autoed measured, so that was my mistake. So we're going to do that first, and what you're going to see is this is going to actually move. So we don't have prisms. We've got it straight down. We should have about 6.6 millimeters, I believe it is. 6.8, and there we see it has shifted. So again, make sure you do your auto measure and get that out of the way first. So it's a little bit big again. We're going to bring it down and bring it up close to the top. So that should be pretty good. So now that we've got that, we are going to, so what I want to do before I jump into checking that, I'm going to put in the power here. So we're going to go 20 at 10 speed because I think that's the one that I like. We will hit process now. And we're ready to frame it out. So we'll hit that. Okay, we come over to our machine, lights pulsating. So then we will have a look here. We can see down. No, I think that is perfect. We're right along those edges. All right, so we'll come back to the computer. And we will hit framing complete. Good. I've got my power set up. That's all good. It says it's going to take 168 minutes. And this is what I mean by, of course, you want to speed up your projects as much as possible, because if you're making multiple on glasses or tiles, it can take a long time. So let's go. All right, so there it is. We've got our light pulsating again, and away we go. We will let that go for 2.5 hours, I guess. And we'll come back, and hopefully we'll have a beautiful piece of engraved tile. All right, there we go. It actually only took an hour and 40 minutes to do, which is, I guess, 100 minutes instead of the 168. So it was a little bit off. So we're going to take this out. We're going to clean it up and see what it looks like. Okay, so if you're interested in any of the Xtool equipment, of course, the link is always down in the description. Check it out. So we are now completed here. So you can see there is a nice clean QR code. So if you want to give that a scan, you can subscribe to our 10 Acre Woods channel right from there. Something I noticed on there when I did my initial run with my grid pattern, I did that basically within 24 hours. I painted it, I waited 24 hours, and then I engraved it, and then I cleaned it. And I used gasoline. Came right off. Beautiful. Didn't disturb the blacks at all. It was nice and clean. Now when I waited and did the second coat 3 days had passed. So I think what had happened is it had hardened and cured. Gasoline, I was having a real hard time getting it all off. So I went and picked up some paint thinner, some acetone, and it did come off. Of course, it left all these little flakes and everything, and I had to clean up the tile. I think there still is a couple little bits on there. But I only cleaned this with gasoline. I didn't go with the acetone because my thinking is there is a coating of paint on this porcelain tile. So do I run the risk of taking that layer off as well? It's actually nice and white. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the white, the tile itself is slightly cream colored. I don't know if you'll be able to pick it up on the camera, but it is not quite as white as the white is. So the gasoline, what it did is it cleaned off all the engraving bits to make it nice and sharp. So, you know, keep that in mind. I think I'm just going to leave it like this, and it looks great as it is. So that is it. I think I covered everything. I wanted to make sure that I got a bunch of information for you and try out a few different test patterns. And I'm pretty happy with what I got. Like I said, I'm going to try 3 coats in the future. I'm going to go a little bit faster on the speed, kind of push the speed a little bit. But the 168 minutes was actually 100 minutes. So it wasn't too bad. If you're running a lot of different ones, or the same ones multiple times, then you'll probably want to try to get it as fast as you can. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions, please leave them down below in the comment section. And we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.